Hey everybody, I'm John from American Eagle Plumbing. Today we're going to be installing a Delta Touch Faucet, and I'm going to go through some tips and tricks to make that installation go smooth. When you get it pulled out of the box, it's going to come largely just like this. When you put it in the hole to make it go smoother, I always like to take the spray wand completely out and disconnect this top gooseneck from the base of the faucet. It'll go, just pull it out just like that. It's just a compression. And then this whole wand will pull right out of the base. And then set this aside, and we're gonna focus on installing the base. The reason we pull it out of the base is because the spray wand goes through this shank. It's a couple of reasons for that. When we're gonna put it through the hole, it's one less cord to go through the hole of the countertop. And then when we tighten up the nut that secures this to the countertop, it's one less cord underneath the countertop to contend with. As we install this faucet through the countertop, it's important there's a electrical wire that we need to make sure that's not pinched. So keep in mind when you're feeding your water lines through the hole is to making sure that this guy is about the last thing that goes in and it's not pinched or touching or crossed. Now that we have it all aligned, it can go down smoothly, and then we can reorient this faucet to the correct spot. It's also important, there's a little LED screen that's in this base. So it's important that the LED screen is facing towards you. The tools that are required for underneath are gonna be this tool that comes in the box, as well as you're gonna need a Phillips screwdriver. So this is what the bottom side of that clamp looks like that we're gonna slide over the shank that we were previously talking about. And that shank gonna go through this center hole. We're gonna slide that all the way up to the bottom of the countertop and tighten this nut over it. So if you remember, we took out that cord. So now we don't have to contend with the cord while we're trying to tighten up the nut to the base of the faucet. So it's very important, if you wanna save yourself a lot of headache, remove the shank and the spray wand off the faucet. Here's our base. You can take your free hand and hold all the cords, all the tubes out of the faucet so that your base remains still, and slide this up the shank of that faucet. Get that in place, and then start that nut and start spinning. It's a little bit of a spin. So if you do have a second person, it's kind of helpful to have them hold that base of the faucet straight. But I'll show you what I do in the event that that's not available. One of my screws came out. It happens. We'll get it. Now that I've got that nut tightened, hand tight, all the way to the bottom, I'm gonna take my tool that comes in the box, and this slips over the shank and over that nut to tighten it. What I like to do is just make sure that this base is nice and square, and I pull this handle down and get up and take a look just to make sure everything is directional and looks good. And then I hold it with my left hand like that. And underneath, some of this is by touch. So I reach underneath and feel for that post on the faucet and slide this tool up that post to where it engages in that nut. So holding this still with your free hand, and then underneath, there it engages. Engaging that nut and then turning this tool so that it tightens that nut to where it's nice and snug. And after that's done, I'm gonna take my Phillips screwdriver and just snug up those two screws. I had already replaced the one that fell out when I was installing it. So I'm just gonna snug those up, and then the base of my faucet is installed. Now that the base of our faucet is installed, we can install or reinstall our gooseneck and sprayer wand. So take the end of your sprayer wand and you're gonna slip it through the middle part of your base. Sometimes it goes smoothly like it did in this one. Sometimes it gets caught up. If it gets caught up, you just have to kind of plunge it a little bit and then it'll slip through the base of that shank. Making sure that they're all inside and give it a nice firm push, and then that'll seat down in there. One of the most important parts of installing a touch faucet is installing the solenoid, or I will call it the brains of the touch faucet, which is this device right here. These wires, or the issues that have come across with touch faucets is because the solenoid or the wires are crossed and they're not allowing the faucet to pick up the sensor. So that's why when I talked about installing this wire, is making sure that it wasn't crossed or pinched or touching anything, and it's very free all the way up through the base and through the adapter going up to the faucet. This solenoid goes on this adapter right here. We're gonna go ahead and install this. Now, there's only one way you can install it on the faucet. It's directional. So this blue one goes up into this lead on the faucet right here. It's just a push fitting. Get it nice and snug and then pull that clip on. We'll attach the wires here in a second, but since we're hooking up hoses and tubing, we're gonna install, this is the sprayer wand. So this goes to the bottom of the solenoid. Don't forget your weight. This goes on first, this is the weight. So when you pull your sprayer wand out, it slips back down and to the top of the faucet. So we got our weight on. We'll put this on the bottom of the solenoid. Again, give it a good push. And then there's a clip right here that holds it together. So now, that weight pulls the sprayer head back into the gooseneck. Now it's time for the important hooking up of the solenoid to the battery pack and the faucet itself. The solenoid has a couple different wires that's coming out of it. One is this red and white, or red and black wire. This is gonna go to the battery pack. We'll hook that up in a second. The other one is gonna be this green, and it has a little hook on the end right there. This is gonna go about an inch, inch and a half up that shank that we were talking about. Making sure, again, that we're not crossing any wires when we're hooking this up. This just slips right on it. Now this wire's not crossing anything, and it's very free, it's not touching anything, it's very important. Now that wire that we talked about when we installed it through the countertop is this guy. This plugs right into the side of the solenoid valve. There's only one spot where it can go, and you can't mess it up. Again, making sure that we're not crossing our wires. Ideally, a lot of the wires, you want them to not cross if possible. So orienting the solenoid so that nothing is really touching. Last thing that we got to do is hook up the battery pack. So the battery pack comes empty. There's this guy right here. And you can do it a couple different ways. You can take out this insert and you can use C batteries. It uses 3 C batteries or 6 AA batteries. Everything's on the device as to the direction of the batteries. We're going to use the insert and then insert the batteries directionally according to the back side of this package. All right, there we go. And then on the top of this guy, it shows you positive, negative. Just attach that to the positive and negative side of your battery pack. All right. When battery placement pack, put this laying down in the back Again, ideally where it's not touching. You can get, I mean, it's kind of hard sometimes to orient these wires so they don't really touch anything. This one's kind of wanting to touch the hot shutoff valve. So in that event, we can just slide this. We'll turn this guy around and put this battery back in the back corner again, so the wires aren't really touching. Sometimes it's impossible, but do your best so that those things don't touch. We still have the water lines to hook up, but I can show you and demonstrate how this touch faucet works. You're going to be turning the faucet in the on position and then just tap it, and that's going to be indicated by this blue LED light. So no light means no, it's not on. Light means that once we get the water lines hooked up, we're going to get water out of it. You can touch it here, 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 anywhere except for your sprayer head. And the reason why it's not the sprayer head is so you can pull down and rinse out your sink or do the dishes, but you can touch it with your wrist, your finger, your nose. You're good. So we're gonna go ahead and hook up the water lines and flush it out and then turn on the water. Sometimes an adjustment of the wires have to be made after you get your water lines installed, but now that our water lines are hooked up, they're in the off position yet. We're going to remove the solenoid from the faucet stem. The reason we're going to do that is because when we turn the water lines on, we want to flush the system. We don't want any kind of debris from water or in the water to get into our solenoid, and that can cause the faucet to end up dripping. So one extra step, grab yourself a little bucket, hold it underneath here. Again, we're gonna remove this top clip. So we're gonna remove the touch portion of the faucet, so it's manual. All right, slide that just out of the way. That way we can hold the bucket underneath there. So I'm gonna turn our faucet off. We're gonna turn our water on to the faucet. Hot and the cold. And then we're gonna flush the system out. Making sure that none of that debris gets into our solenoid. And then go ahead and reinstall the solenoid. Because this kitchen sink doesn't have drains hooked up yet, I'm gonna use a bucket and we'll turn this faucet on. You can touch it anywhere you need to, and it'll turn on and off. I'm John from American Eagle Plumbing. Be great.